Have you ever felt like your life is a play in which you never chose your role? Every morning when you wake up, you put on a smile, a positive attitude, fulfill your responsibilities, interact with people as if everything is fine, but when night falls and the silence sets in, a sharp question comes to your mind: who am I really? Carl Jung, one of the greatest psychologists of the 20th century, believed that this feeling of emptiness is not random. It is an important signal, a warning from deep within the subconscious that you are living far away from your true nature. We grow up in a society with hundreds of invisible rules. You must be obedient, be good, be reasonable, do not show yourself too much, do not go against the adults. Gradually, we learn to hide our true feelings, true thoughts, true desires, just to be accepted. From there, a socialized version of ourselves is formed, a mask. Jung called this mask the persona, a shell that we use to adapt and survive. But the problem is, when you wear the mask for too long, you begin to mistake it for your true self. The feeling of being lost, disoriented, or as if you are living someone else's life, is the consequence of living too far away from your original self. The scary thing is, many people go through their whole lives without ever knowing who they really are. They die with a name, a title, a biography, but their soul has never truly lived. Therefore, if you have ever felt that your current life is not really yours, this is not a sign of weakness, but an invitation to begin the journey back to yourself. From childhood, we began to learn how to adapt in order to be loved. A mischievous child would be called naughty, a sensitive child would be criticized as weak, and instinctive anger would be extinguished with a stern look and the words, "You must not do that." Gradually, we learn to discard those inappropriate parts of ourselves, and instead build an image that others could accept. Carl Jung called that image the persona, a social mask. It is the role we play in life, the invisible costume that helps us integrate into society, where everyone has their own expectations of who you should be. With your parents, you are the good child. At work, you are the ideal colleague. On social media, you are positive, confident, and successful. But after all those roles, what remains of you? Imagine a girl named Sophia. Since childhood, she was always praised for being obedient and reasonable. She never argued, never refused to help anyone. As she grew up, Sophia became a pleasant person, everyone loved her. But what few people knew is that Sophia often suffered from insomnia, constant anxiety, and felt as if her life was controlled by others. Sophia had sacrificed herself to maintain that perfect mask. This is exactly the price of the persona. Although it helps us be recognized by society, if we live completely in that role, we will lose the connection to ourselves. Because the mask, no matter how beautiful, can never replace the soul. Worse, over time, that mask is no longer just a tool, it becomes who you are. You no longer remember what you used to think, what you used to feel, what you used to want. Each day passes as a copy of the previous day, working, socializing, forced smiles, and feeling empty. Jung's message is very clear: living in the persona is living far away from your true nature. You may be praised, but not happy. You may be successful, but never feel enough. And deep inside there will always be a void that cannot be filled with money, love, or achievements. That is the emptiness of your own self. And the question you need to face is not, what do others think of me, but who am I when I no longer play any role? Have you ever felt that, even if you achieve the goals you once dreamed of, having a stable job, a good relationship, a life that others envy, deep inside you still feel empty? As if you own everything, but lack the most important thing? Carl Jung once warned, the price of living away from your true nature is not light. When you forget your real self, what you lose is not only joy, but the meaning of living. Ethan is a successful software engineer. He has a high salary, is valued by his company, has a stable family. Yet every night when he comes home, he feels tired, bored, and does not understand why. Everyone thinks he has it all. But he feels like a machine, living in a meaningless loop. In a therapy session, when asked what used to make you feel alive, Ethan broke down crying. He said that as a child he loved to draw, loved to tell stories, but put it all aside to study engineering because that was a career with a future. This is exactly what Jung was talking about. The feeling of emptiness does not come from external shortage, but from inner disconnection. It is not because you lack a better job or a more ideal relationship, but because you have lost yourself a long time ago. We often believe that happiness comes from achieving something, a higher salary, a bigger house, a more beautiful body. But when those things arrive, the satisfaction lasts only briefly, then returns to the feeling of lack. We live in a society that encourages self-perfection according to external standards, becoming more attractive, smarter, more successful. But if those standards are not truly yours, then all efforts to chase them only push you further away from your real self. And the greater the distance between you and your true nature, the more stuck you will feel. Maybe you do not recognize it immediately. But prolonged boredom, senseless anxiety, or the feeling that, my life is nothing special, are silent signals that you are not living true to yourself. Jung affirmed, what you need does not lie outside. It is not a new success or a new love. What you need, is you. The question is, do you have enough courage to step into your own mind, and find the true self that has been forgotten? From a social point of view, being able to adapt to many different roles is praiseworthy. We know how to behave properly at work, be respectful toward the elderly, and appear friendly on social media. But there is a thin line between social flexibility and losing yourself. Carl Jung called this social mask the persona, a psychological shell that helps us be accepted by the community. But the problem begins when that mask is no longer a tool, but becomes your entire identity. Imagine someone named Aisha. Aisha is energetic, friendly, always knows how to make others feel comfortable. But few know that behind those smiles is an endless exhaustion. She does not dare to say no, does not show dissatisfaction, and always feels anxious when facing conflict. One time, when Aisha decided to temporarily take leave because of burnout, her friends and colleagues were surprised. How could someone like you be stressed? They did not know that Aisha had lived many years not for herself, but to maintain the cute and sociable image that everyone expected. This is the common psychological trap that Jung warned of. When you identify yourself with the mask, that is, believe you truly are that role, you begin to reject the authentic parts of yourself, the anger, the weakness, the desires that do not fit the model. And then, you do not live as a whole human being, but as a programmed character designed to please others. This not only erodes your mental health, but also makes you feel trapped in an invisible loop. The important question is, how many decisions in your life truly come from within, and how many are just for acceptance, for love, or to avoid judgment? Jung once said, "We do not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." That means, healing does not come from trying to be better or more reasonable in the eyes of others. It comes from having the courage to face what you have denied, from the feelings that do not please others, to the desires deemed wrong. You once dreamed of being an artist, but were called unrealistic, so you chose accounting. You wanted to live slowly and simply, but were afraid of being seen as a failure, so you pursued success at all costs. You felt lonely, but pretended to be strong because, I must not be weak. All of these things are not wrong, they are simply the result of living in the persona for too long. The persona helps you integrate, but if you are not careful, it will swallow you whole. When you always smiling while your mind wants to cry, or when you try to act okay even though everything is collapsing, that is a sign that the mask is controlling you. It is time to ask, am I living truly, or just playing the role that life imposed on me? If the persona is the mask you wear to be liked, then the shadow, according to Carl Jung, is every part you have hidden away to avoid rejection. But the most important thing is, what is denied does not disappear. It does not vanish. It only retreats deep into the subconscious, and waits for the day to return. Have you ever gotten angry without knowing why? Ever felt jealous and then immediately guilty? Ever overreacted to a small piece of feedback? All of those things could be your shadow speaking up. A real-life example. Kai is a gentle person, always yielding in every situation. He believes that a kind person does not get angry. But one day, when someone wrongly blamed him at work, Kai could not control himself. He slammed the table, screamed, and then collapsed. He was both ashamed and shocked. That was not me. In fact, that was him. That was the anger he had repressed all his life. The emotion labeled as bad and buried at the bottom of his soul. CarlJung called it the shadow, the dark side in every human. It includes the desires, feelings, memories, and parts of the personality that society or you yourself consider unacceptable. But the paradox is, the shadow is not only the place that contains bad things, it is also a treasure trove of creative power, unique personality, and authentic instincts. When you were little, you were very curious and asked many questions. But the teacher called you annoying, and you learned to be silent. You once expressed sadness, and your parents said, "Don't be so weak." So you buried that emotion. You once showed rightful anger, but were scolded as disrespectful. So you swallowed your anger and learned to pretend to be okay. Those things do not disappear. They accumulate. And when not properly processed, they will erupt in a distorted way: depression, anxiety, self-destruction, or destroying relationships. Modern society often worships the image of positive, successful, emotionally controlled so much that we believe bad emotions must be eliminated. But in fact, the shadow is not the enemy. It is the forgotten part of yourself, the part that is still waiting to be acknowledged. Jung emphasized, "You cannot become whole if you do not reconcile with your own shadow." This does not mean you indulge every negative emotion. It means you look directly at it, understand why it exists, and learn how to integrate it into your life consciously. An artist once hid her anger and suffering throughout her childhood. But instead of continuing to deny it, she began to bring it into her paintings. The result was, her work became authentic, vivid, and full of power. She not only healed herself but also inspired thousands of others. No light exists without darkness accompanying it. If you want to live truly, deeply, and freely, you need the courage to step into the shadow. Because precisely there, you will find the most important parts of yourself. Who are you if you remove every role and face every part you once denied? CarlJung believed that every person carries within a deep psychological center called the self. It is not only the I you know every day, but the totality of everything you are, from the part you show to the world, persona, to the parts you repress, shadow, and even the potential abilities you have never explored. Jung said that the deepest goal in human life is not success, not recognition, but to become a whole person, a being who lives true to their original nature. He called this process individuation, or in other words, the journey back to yourself. So how to find the self? The first important thing to understand is, the self does not appear in a safe state. You will not find it by living according to others' expectations, or by pretending you have no wounds. The self only appears when you are brave enough to face the truth about yourself, including the parts you once hated, once feared, once denied. A real-life example. William is a successful person, with a family, a house, a car, and status. But after a midlife crisis at 40, he began to ask, "What have I lived for?" He realized, from childhood to adulthood, every choice he made was to please parents, teachers, wife, children, but never for himself. In therapy, William began to face the anger repressed since childhood, the disappointment with himself, and even the passion for photography he once abandoned. Precisely from that point, he began to connect with a deeper part inside, a part he had never dared to look at. Finding the self is not like a beautiful dream, but like a process of deconstructing yourself. You must be willing to break down illusions. I must always be strong, I must be kind, I cannot fail, to accept that you are both weak and strong, both kind and selfish, and that is your true humanity. The self is not your best version, but your most complete version. It includes not only the light you want to show but also the darkness you once feared. And the paradox lies here: precisely when you embrace your worst parts, you truly touch your best core. Jung once said, "Show me a sane man and I will cure him for you." He understood that those who are always okay, always good, always proper, are often those who have buried themselves the deepest. The self is not something you can prove to the world. It is not something to post on social media or to show off to others. It is a deep inner state, where you feel, I am living truly. I don't need to pretend. I am myself. But to achieve that state, you must accept a challenging journey. And it cannot begin if you keep running away from yourself. The question for you: are you living by your true essence, or just trying to become someone to be accepted? There is an important moment on the journey of self-discovery. It is when you realize, you no longer want to live to please anyone. That is not selfish rebellion, but a painful and beautiful awakening. You deserve to live truly, without having to play a role anymore. CarlJung called this turning point the beginning of the individuation process, when you stop attaching yourself to false social roles and start listening to your inner voice. Zara was once a perfect person in everyone's eyes. She worked in a prestigious banking sector, always neat, well-spoken, and always okay. But after experiencing mild depression once, she began to ask herself, why do I feel exhausted when I haven't done anything wrong? When Zara went deeper into therapy, she realized, she had lived by others' expectations for 30 years. She had never dared to say, I don't like finance. Never dared to say, I feel lonely. And never asked, who am I if I don't please anyone? This is the first step to removing the mask. No longer playing the dutiful child, the always positive friend, the ideal lover, or the model employee, but beginning to be honest. That you are tired. That you are not sure you are going the right way. That there are parts of you that need to be heard, even if they are not beautiful. Jung once said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. The greatest privilege of a human life is to become yourself, not the version others expect, not the social ideal, but yourself, even if full of scratches and contradictions. When you begin to live truly, what happens? You feel relieved. No longer needing to pretend to be the one who always has the answers. You can admit that you sometimes get lost, and that does not make you less valuable. You become braver. Instead of deciding based on the fear of being judged, you choose what makes you feel alive, even if others do not understand. You connect more deeply. Authenticity helps you create relationships based on empathy, not on matching or standards. You understand yourself better. You begin to realize, the things that once worried you, being liked, being admired, are now less important than being yourself. But this journey is not easy. You will meet resistance from yourself. If I live truly, will others still accept me? You will feel scared. If I stop, will I fall behind? And sometimes, you will feel lonely. Because this world is not used to people who do not follow a script. But you will see something greater. Every step you take away from the mask, you move closer to freedom. Every time you speak your truth, you rescue a part of yourself from the invisible prison. Every honest action is a healing act. Freedom does not begin when you have money, fame, or recognition. It begins when you look in the mirror and see, that person is me, no more, no less. Do you dare to live like that? Not perfect, but true. We often believe that our decisions are the result of reason. That we act because of mature thinking or logical argument. But CarlJung warned that most of what drives us in daily life does not lie in the conscious layer, but comes from a deep dark region called the unconscious. To truly understand yourself, you cannot just rely on what you think. You need to learn to listen to what is whispering inside, symbols, feelings, dreams, and repeated reactions you cannot control. So what is the unconscious? According to Jung, the unconscious consists of two layers. Personal unconscious, containing forgotten memories, unhealed wounds, repressed emotions from childhood. Collective unconscious, something we all share. It is the spiritual foundation of humanity, where archetypes are born, ancient psychological patterns that shape how we see the world. You often dream of falling from a high place, or being chased by someone, but don't know why. You often feel pulled toward strong people, but often get hurt in those relationships. These things are not meaningless, they are signs from the unconscious trying to send you a message, through symbols and repeated experiences. Jung believed that the subconscious does not speak in logical language, but in images, feelings, and symbols. It communicates with you through dreams, intuition, and even the mistakes you keep repeating. Try to imagine the mind as an iceberg. The part that emerges above the water is reason, while the part submerged below, up to 90%, is the unconscious. And if you do not look at this submerged part, you will live in decisions that seem free, but are actually driven by invisible forces. A woman always chooses domineering men, then suffers in each relationship. Why? Maybe deep in her unconscious, the image of true love is tied to control, something she saw in her parents. A man always refuses to express emotion, not knowing why he always feels empty. His unconscious may have learned that emotion is weakness since childhood. This is not coincidence. This is the rule of the soul, where the unconscious is the invisible driver you do not realize. So what should we do? Jung advised us to listen to the unconscious by paying attention to dreams, observing unexpected feelings, noting situations that repeat in life. He called this the path of reconciliation between consciousness and the unconscious, where you begin to connect with the deepest part of the self. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Carl Jung. You cannot understand yourself just by thinking. You must feel, observe, and accept that inside you exist wordless, but powerful, parts. They are not as vague or irrational as we often think. They are the doorway to wholeness. Have you ever listened to your dreams? Maybe, that is the call of yourself, knocking, waiting for you to return. The journey to find the self is not an easy road. It requires you to remove the mask you have worn for many years, to face the inner darkness you once avoided, and to bravely step into the deepest layers of the unconscious, where your true voice always exists. Carl Jung did not promise this process would be smooth. But he believed, only when you dare to look straight at yourself, can you truly be free. Freedom does not come from pleasing the world, but from living honestly with your soul. You may not become the perfect version others expect. But you will become yourself, whole, true, alive. And that is the greatest achievement a human can attain. Not to be loved by all, but to live truly, with yourself. Are you ready to begin that journey? If anything in this video makes you reflect, please share it in the comments. Which mask are you ready to remove? What part of you has been forgotten for too long? The journey has only just begun. Don't miss the next video about dreams and how they reveal your true self.